Welcome back, folks, to Hashtag Ask Us, in the weekly Monday Mailbag video where I answer your questions from Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube right in this video forum. I am on vacation this week, hence the changing setting, but nevertheless, a lot of great questions, so let's get right down to it. Jose C., his question from YouTube was, is Cesaro being buried at the moment, and if he is it John Cena's, Paul Heyman's, or WWE's fault? Because I usually hear those three names. No, I don't say Paul Heyman's being buried. I'm sorry, Cesaro is being buried. That term buried is often thrown around for a lot of the wrong reasons. If anything, Cesaro is currently being mishandled, underutilized. The guy was coming off a head of steam out of WrestleMania. It was only logical to turn him babyface, come out of the whole Real Americans thing. But WWE, for some reason or another, opted to turn him or keep him as a heel for the time being. And then the whole thing flopped. The thing with Paul Heyman, the relationship with Paul Heyman, the partnership with Paul Heyman had potential. It had potential to be great. Everyone had high hopes for it, myself included, and it bombed. He floundered. He lost the U.S. title match against Sheamus at Payback. He lost at Money in the Bank. He failed to win the IC Championship at Battleground. It's been a recurring joke with Cesaro over the last couple of weeks. He's lost to Big E. He's lost to Kofi Kingston. He lost to Jack Swagger. He lost to Dolph Ziggler in 2 weeks. In 2 minutes on Raw a couple of weeks ago. So this whole thing with Cesaro has been absolutely mind-boggling. Like I said before, he was well on his way to becoming a top star in WWE, a top fan favorite, right before WrestleMania. Then after WrestleMania, it all went downhill. So it sucks. But I wouldn't say he's being buried. If he was being buried, then he wouldn't be having as strong of showings as he is. He had a great match against John Cena, the WWE World Heavyweight Champion, on Raw only 2 or 3 weeks ago. They wouldn't give him that much offense against Cena if he was being buried. So like I said, he's just being underutilized. They probably just don't have much for him to do at the moment. I get other questions about this later on in the video, but to stress, he is not being buried. They just don't really have anything for him to do. Of the 3 people that you mentioned, no, it's not John Cena's fault, because Cesaro was already on this downhill spiral long before he ever faced John Cena, so I don't see how this has to do with John Cena. Paul Heyman, it's really not his fault. Some people point to Ryback and Curtis Axel as being failures as Paul Heyman guys. Once again, it is not his fault. They were damaged goods long before they ever joined up with Paul Heyman. Curtis Axel had no chance of ever getting over, and Ryback was already dead in the water by the time he joined up with Paul Heyman in the fall of last year. So I don't blame it on Paul Heyman whatsoever. And with Cesaro, it just really didn't make much sense. Cesaro was destined to be a babyface from right before WrestleMania. They botched it. So if it's anyone's fault, it's WWE's. Hopefully they can right that wrong now that him and Heyman have now parted ways. Now Cesaro can branch off on his own as a babyface. His second question was, what do you think is the craziest, most messed up things that WWE writers have thought of? Example, Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio's son, the whole custody bullshit from 05, CM Punk making fun of the heart attacks, etc. There's a lot of stuff. I can list off a lot of stuff, but the stuff that came to my top of my head first, Mae Young giving birth to a hand in the Attitude Era in the late 1990s. That is obviously leading that list. Katie Vick, that's all I need to say. If anyone knows what that is, you know exactly what I'm talking about and why it deserves to be on that list. And at the very top of that, Heidenreich raping Michael Cole, that whole bullshit storyline they did a couple of years ago, that was really weird. Why they did that in the first place, I have no idea. The whole terrorist thing with Muhammad Hassan, when the London bombings occurred and they had people dressed up as terrorists, and that whole thing, that was a complete flop. And they did the whole terrorist thing even after they got warned, and even after UPN kicked Muhammad Hassan off SmackDown, off UPN television. They still did it anyway at the Great American Bash pay-per-view only a couple of weeks later, so that was mind-boggling as well. But those are only a few. I mean, knowing WWE, if you've watched a lot longer than I have, obviously, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Even if you haven't watched long, you know all the BS storylines that WWE has done over the years. And for what reason, I have no idea, just because they can maybe, but it's just funny to think back on that. So funny question by Jose. Jared J's question from Facebook. What are your thoughts on WWE providing released talents with free network subscriptions, as Evan Bourne stated? When Evan Bourne said this, I believe he did a shoot promo, a shoot promo on YouTube, whatever, an interview, I should say, with shoot, whatever. It was a couple of days ago, and in one of the things after he got released, he said that WWE, after he was released, gave him a free WWE Network subscription. What are my thoughts on that? It's really weird. I mean, I know I'm a big wrestling fan. If I was ever to get hired by the WWE then fired, I'd be sure that'd be awesome. I mean, but to get a free network subscription from the company that you were just released from, and to watch matches from a company that you were just fired from makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And why WWE did that? I mean, the only logical thing that comes to mind is the fact that they're desperate to sell network subscriptions. I think we all got that from last week's Raw when they kept on repeating $9.99 over and over and over again. But to give released talents free subscriptions, because I know they're not paying for it, obviously, if it's free, but it's still an extra number in their subscriber count. That's really all that matters to WWE right now. Their stock could plummet. It's all that matters right now is the WWE Network subscriber count. So for them to give Evan Bourne and maybe the other guys, Kurt Hawkins, uh, Brodus Clay, whoever else, Yoshi Tatsu, whoever was released a couple of months ago, I guess maybe they all gave it to them, or maybe just Evan Bourne. I'm not exactly sure. No one else has said this. Evan Bourne was the first one to say this of that release group, so it's just really funny. Why they would do that just to boost his subscriber count, I wouldn't really take it as a kind gesture. I mean, like I said, it's from the company that you were just released from. I mean, that's kind of a slap in the face. I mean, we'll give you a free network subscription for a company that you can't wrestle for anymore, but you can watch the matches and pay-per-views for free if you want. Like, that is so asinine, it's hilarious, and only WWE would do something like that, so I thought that was comical. Andre G, his question was, who should be the one to retire Randy Orton, and how would you book it? I've gotten a few questions like this in the past for guys like The Undertaker and Triple H. To be honest with you, I can't book it, because Randy Orton is one of those guys, even more so than Triple H and The Undertaker, that Randy Orton will be wrestling for years upon years going forward. I could see him wrestling for the next decade at the most. So how far the landscape has changed in the last few years alone is really an indication of how much the roster can change in years ahead. So some guy named Joe Schmo could retire Randy Orton at WrestleMania 35 for all we know. We really don't know. If you had told me a year and a half ago that Roman Reigns, of all people, would be facing Randy Orton at SummerSlam, I would have slapped you silly because I would have never saw that coming. So I can't really answer that question because the roster could change so much that I can't really say who's going to be the one to retire Randy Orton. And anyone from the current roster, I can't really say. Maybe it's Kenta, maybe it's Prince Devitt, maybe it's Sami Zayn, maybe it's Adrian Neville, maybe it's Tyler Breeze for all we know. I can't honestly tell you, but I can't even book it. I mean, no one from the current roster really stands out as someone that should end the career of Randy Orton, because Randy Orton is still in his prime. He's still putting on great matches. The character leaves a lot to be desired. That's for sure. But that's not his fault for the most part. But I can't honestly answer that question. Sorry. So ask me again in a few years, and when he's at the end of his run, maybe we'll have to see about that question once again. Christian H, his question was, do you think Rey Mysterio will retire soon due to injury? And the same question for Christian. Rey Mysterio, absolutely. The guy is definitely nearing the end of his run. He should have been a long time ago, and this is not coming from a Rey Mysterio hater. I was a Rey Mysterio hater many years back when he was quote-unquote burying talents over on SmackDown, Cody Rhodes and Del Rio and other people, when he really wasn't. I kind of over-exaggerated there. But I met Rey Mysterio back in 2010. Great guy. He plays his role well. I mean, these last few years, having good matches whenever he is around, and it's just really hard for WWE to put him in any substantial role in a feud or a tag team or a title run or anything if they know he's going to get hurt. He was only back for only a few months before he left again right after WrestleMania. Remember, he came back in November, right before Survivor Series last year, and then he got injured maybe the night after WrestleMania in his match with Wade Barrett or Bad News Barrett or whatever. And he hasn't been seen since. So Rey Mysterio, and it's really weird what they're doing with Mysterio, because I guess from what I heard that he met with WWE representatives a couple of months ago to re-sign a new contract or something like that. And I guess they re-signed him to a new deal. And not because they want him to stick around, because the merch thing, God knows that he's still selling merch by this point in time in 2014. He's never on TV, so how could he sell merch? But anyway, I guess they need him to make up for the time that he's missed due to injury over the last couple of years. But how can he make up that time if he's not currently on TV due to injury? Like, it makes no sense. It's like contradicting itself. So hopefully they can come to their senses and just let him go soon. I personally just wanted to see one match against Sin Cara, a.k.a. Mystico, before he retired. I mean, just have that match, make him lose, make him win, whatever, then send him off into the sunset. But they can't do that anymore. I mean, they can do that with Sin Cara, the current Sin Cara, but it's Hunico, not Mystico. So it's not the dream match that everyone was hoping for, and now there's really no point. So I couldn't care less. If he retired tomorrow, great career. I mean, there's really nothing left for him to do, so just retire and just get it over with. Christian is a different deal. I'm a big fan of Christian, but I'm not going to say that he shouldn't retire just because I'm a fan of his. He's another guy, too, that is very injury-prone. He's done it all. World champion, IC champion, tag team champion. I want him to have one more storyline / one more match, no pun intended, before he retires. Not just to have him retire. I mean, just because he's got a concussion, which is, I mean, weird. I mean, the guy's 40 years old, so I guess I understand that. But he suffered a concussion, something that guys like Fandango and Ziggler bounced back from within weeks to a month. And then he suffers a concussion. Christian, that is, he's out for 4 to 5 months. So that's not a good sign for Christian. He's definitely going to hang it up by the end of the year. And it looks like he will be because his contract as an active performer on the roster comes up later this year. What date, what month, I have no idea. But it's reportedly expiring later this year. So hopefully he resigns with WWE as a backstage trainer, commentator, interviewer, maybe not an interviewer, but probably an agent or something along those lines would be great. As long as he sticks with the WWE, he can still go. He's just very injury prone. That's the part that sucks. So with that being said, yes, I believe both guys should retire by year's end. His second question was, do you think Triple H will have one more title run? I personally think one more good title run. I'm sorry. I personally think one more good title run will be good for him. He can still be the heel and have someone like a Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, or even a Daniel Bryan beat him for the title. Personally, as a fan, I have no desire to see Triple H as champion ever again. I'm not the biggest Triple H fan. I will admit that, so maybe that's why. But if he's the heel, it's more tolerable than him as the babyface. That'd be boring as all hell if he was to win the championship as a face and then reign as champion for God knows how long. That would not be good. But anyway, though, could it happen? Never say never. I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to completely write it out of the question. I think it is very possible, seeing how Triple H can still have a very good matchup, as we saw at WrestleMania, Extreme Rules, and Payback only a few short months ago. And if the end goal is for him to lose the championship to someone like you said, a Roman Reigns, a Dean Ambrose, or a Daniel Bryan, then I'm all for it. And if you really think about it, in theory, a Triple H championship run makes more sense than a Brock Lesnar title run. I'm not saying from a storyline standpoint as of right now, because Brock Lesnar just ended the streak and you need to give him the championship, but I'm saying forget all that for just a second, forget that ever happened, and just think about it. Triple H is on TV every single week. Brock Lesnar, we know he's not going to sign more dates. Let's not even fantasize about that because he won't. Let's not speculate. We all know Brock Lesnar, being the guy that he is, he doesn't like wrestling, and that's fine. At least he admits it. That's completely fine. We know he's not going to sign on for more dates when he is champion, and it's looking more and more like he will be winning at SummerSlam, which I'm all in favor of because that needs to happen. If Cena wins, breaking the streak at WrestleMania was a complete waste of time. So with that being said, Triple H is champion. He'd be on TV every week. He could have the occasional championship match at a pay-per-view if necessary. He could do a house show every once in a while. Triple H is a guy that is a TV regular. He may not be an active part of the roster anymore, but he's still a part of TV every single week. So him as champion would actually make more sense than Brock Lesnar in a lot more ways than one. So I'm not saying I would like to see Triple H as champion, like I said before, but it is very likely before the end of time that he could have one more reign as champion. Like I said before, don't want to see it personally, but I could very well see it happening, as you said in your question. So Paul asked, his question was, now that Sin Cara and Alberto Del Rio are gone and Rey Mysterio is no longer a hot commodity, I think, do you think the WWE will still target the Latino audience? And if they still do, who do you think will be their next breakout star that will draw huge numbers from their Latino fans? Kalisto. Kalisto, I've gotten a million questions about him over the last couple of months, and I wholeheartedly agree that Kalisto is the next face of the Latino fan base for the WWE. Kalisto has been great in his role in NXT for the last couple of months. He's only been on NXT TV for about 4 or 5 months, I want to say. So, and I heard reports that he might be called up before long, which I would not be surprised at, seeing how Del Rio's currently gone. Sin Cara was a bust, Mystico's gone, and now they have Hunico under the mask, and Rey Mysterio isn't even on TV anymore. So I would not be surprised if they called up Kalisto before long. But with that being said, though, in a perfect world, I would keep him down in NXT for a bit longer. Like I said, he's only been on NXT TV only a handful of times since like March. So I would keep him down there a little longer than maybe call him up within the next year or so. But yeah, Kalisto, I think he's great. He knows English. That's one thing that Sin Cara didn't know when he was brought over to the United States and to work for WWE almost immediately. So, and then Sin Cara was jumped, unfortunately, right to the main roster. So part of that was his fault. Part of that was WWE's fault. It was a mixed effort there. It was a joint effort by the WWE. But anyway, though, Kalisto knows English. He's great in the ring. He connects with the crowd with his little lucha, lucha, a whole chant he does down in NXT. It might be from the indie scene or something. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, absolutely. Kalisto, I think, is the next Latino #1 guy for the WWE. Because like I said before, Del Rio was a bust. Sin Cara was a bust. And Rey Mysterio is on his way out. So Kalisto, 100% absolutely your next face of the Latino fan base for WWE. Justin Godsey, his question was, I know you are a big-time William Regal fan, but when you look back at his career, do you think his run as a commissioner was a success over him being the Raw general manager or vice versa? Great question, and not only because I'm a William Regal fan. You look at his run as a commissioner, and I wasn't a fan at the time, so I can't really say if he was great, if he was good, whatever. From what I've seen, he was pretty great. He got a WrestleMania match out of it against Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 27, WrestleMania 17. So that's one thing. He had he was involved in a lot of top tier storylines. He mixed it up with a number of superstars from Stone Cold to The Rock, Shawn Michaels, a lot of people during his run as commissioner in 2000 and 2001. As GM, I have a soft spot for the GM run in 2008 because that's when I started watching. He's the one that got me into wrestling to begin with. So that being said, though, he was really hot for maybe a month or two, but if you really think about it, the run as Raw general manager for William Regal, it wasn't bad early on. It was just extremely forgettable. He did nothing. He became the Raw general manager by winning that Battle Royal, if you recall, in the month of August in 2007. And then from that point until maybe right after WrestleMania, he did nothing. It wasn't until after WrestleMania when he turned off the lights, when he got under the skin of guys like CM Punk and Randy Orton and Triple H and John Cena. He was, being a complete asshole to the WWE fans, the WWE Universe, and he was getting great heat for it. And there were a lot of reports, a lot of rumors that he was scheduled to win the World Championship. Whether that's true or not, it remains to be seen. I mean, William Regal said himself in interviews, even on an episode of NXT late last year, that drugs and the suspension messed him up in this whole push and whatever. So had that suspension not happened, had he not gotten suspended in May of 2008, maybe I'd be saying that the GM run would have been more of a success than his commissioner run because it could have possibly led to him becoming a world champion in 2008 because remember, he was the king of the ring as well at the same time. But he was only hot for about a month or so before he was taken off TV due to suspending the WWE wellness policy for 60 days. He was suspended for that long. So I would say between the two, because he got suspended and that run was cut short, I would say that the run as commissioner from 01 to 2000, 2001, whatever, was more of a success than him as Raw general manager. At Cody Collier 12, and now we're getting to the Twitter questions. His question was, why do you think Michael Cole, Jerry Lawler, and JBL said it was their first time commentating together when it was the 2007 Royal Rumble matchup? So maybe I don't know exactly what you're referring to, that if they said just recently that their first time commentating together right now, that it was actually the 07 Royal Rumble matchup, or if they said during the 07 Royal Rumble that was their first time commentating. I really have no idea. I don't really know what you're supposed to be getting at, so I'm sorry I can't really answer your question to the fullest because I'm not exactly what you're asking. But sorry. Next question at Prince Watercrest. His question was, what is your opinion of the nixing of the New Nation angle with Woods, Kofi, and Big E? Absolutely disappointment. Major disappointment by WWE. They do this kind of shit all the time where they get something good going, it gets people talking, gets people interested, like, wow, this could really be something. And then they pull the plug just like that. Just like that. And it pisses me off. It pisses other people off, and rightfully so. Because this angle had a lot of potential. Xavier Woods, Kofi Kingston, and Big E weren't doing jack shit before any of this went down. They were all bland. All three of them were bland baby faces. Then you do this angle, and everyone's like 10 times more interested in all of them for the first time in years. So I thought it was great. It could have led to something. And it wasn't like anything really went wrong with it. It wasn't like it got bad publicity, like it went mainstream and people were saying that, oh, it's racist, you shouldn't be doing this. It's wrong by WWE to be doing the whole Nation of Domination thing once again. There was no bad press from what I saw. Nothing went wrong. There was no bad matches, no bad mic time. Xavier Woods, from what I saw, didn't say the wrong thing. So I don't know. Maybe they just stopped caring about it. Maybe they just lost interest in the whole angle, which would suck and would not be out of the realm of Vince McMahon to do. I would not be surprised whatsoever if that was the case, but it really does suck seeing how the whole angle had potential and they just pulled the plug on it just like that within a week. So you got to wait and see. Hopefully they give it about a week or so. We'll see tonight on Raw whether the angle or not. We'll get more time whether it lives on or it dies. But as of last week, Big E wrestled the match on SmackDown last week against Rusev. Xavier Woods wasn't out there. Kofi Kingston wasn't out there. So I have no effing idea what they're supposed to be doing with any three of these guys. And it really pisses me off if they did indeed drop it because, like I said before, had a lot of potential. So here's hoping they didn't drop it and they bring it back this week on Raw, SmackDown, whatever. And all of this was just a 1 week off from the whole storyline, which they have done in the past with feuds and stuff. They cut a feud short and then they go back to it the next week. WWE is very inconsistent in that respect. But if it is indeed done, if they indeed nixed it, I would be incredibly pissed and disappointed because, like I said before, it was well on its way to becoming great and one of the best things that WWE's come up with in a while. At Hardy DX fan, his question was, if you can bring back the Raw guest host angle, who would you have be the guest host? Bob Barker, I thought was a great guest host when they had him on about 5 years ago. When I did my list of ranking every guest host in Monday Night Raw history, Bob Barker was easily number one. That goes without saying. So I would bring back Barker for another round. I thought he was great. Hugh Jackman was awesome as well. Being a huge Christopher Lloyd fan and being the big fan of Back to the Future that I am, I would have him on there to promote what I have no idea, but selfishly I would have him on for just no apparent reason aside from just me being a big fan of his. Adam Sandler, I know he's not the most liked guy right now in the movie business for whatever reason. Maybe it's because of his shitty movies. I'm not exactly sure. But he doesn't seem to be in the good graces of many people right now for whatever reason. But they showed him in many commercials, like when they would hype up, like we would have a celebrity guest host hosting every single week. They showed Adam Sandler a few times, and he is a wrestling fan from what I understand. He was in the crowd for WrestleMania 21 in Los Angeles at the Staples Center. But it would be cool to see him on WWE TV. There's a few people here and there that I could think of, not really off the top of my head. If I gave it some more time to think about, then maybe I'd come up with more names. But yeah, Bob Barker, Christopher Lloyd, Hugh Jackman, all those guys I loved. I would love to see him back on the show as a Raw guest host in the future. At Green Day Bunny X, her question was, which current NXT superstar or diva do you think will do wonders on the main roster in the future? Bayley, for one thing, I think is highly underrated. She's great in the ring. She's got very good mic skills. She's absolutely adorable. I think she could very well mesh with the WWE audience, especially this day and age with the PG rating and it being very family friendly. Bayley fits the bill to perfection. I think she is perfect for WWE this day and age. And when they eventually call her up, I think she will get over huge. Emma is a completely different story because I think they introduced her on the main roster the wrong way by doing the whole dancing contest, and the whole pairing with Santino was doomed from the start, to be quite honest with you. But I think Bayley can get over great on the main roster, especially considering she's a great wrestler. So Bayley, I think, is very underrated in that respect. When people talk about who do you think being a big star on the roster before time, and people always mention these next two people I'm going to mention next. But Bayley, I think, is left out of the conversation more often than not, and I think she deserves to be in that conversation because she's great, got a great look, great in the ring, good mic skills, she can connect with the crowd. The NXT crowd loves her, and I know it's different from the main roster crowd, but this day and age with the whole family-friendly take that WWE is taking, that whole route, I think she fits the bill to perfection. Sami Zayn, I think, goes without saying, great in the ring. Got a lot of experience in the indie scene. He's had a great run in NXT these last year and a half with Cesaro, Adam Rose, Leo Kruger, who else has had great matches with Corey Graves, just recently Tyson Kidd. Sami Zayn, I think, could have been brought up to the main roster as soon as he got up and could have succeeded. So just think about a year and a half later how great he's going to do on the main roster with all this experience down in WWE's developmental system as Sami Zayn, NXT. So yeah, I think Sami Zayn is going to be a big roster on a big star on the main roster when they eventually call him up. Tyler Breeze is another guy. I think if they tweak his gimmick just a bit, and he's done a great job of becoming more aggressive in his matches. Go back and watch his NXT Takeover matchup with Sami Zayn of all people, like I just mentioned. Those two had a great matchup on that show. So if you really want an eye-opening performance from Tyler Breeze, look no further than a match in NXT Takeover with Sami Zayn. So I think he could be a great star in the main roster as well. Adrian Neville, I've mentioned him on the show before in terms of being called up. Will his size hold him back? I personally think so. I think he won't get past a certain level, which sucks to say. He's great. His mic skills leave a little something to be desired, and it's kind of due to the fact of his accent. It's kind of hard for people to understand him. I understand that. It's not really all of his fault, and he is a spectacle to watch in the ring, but I just don't think personally that he will get past a certain point in terms of success in the WWE. But hopefully they prove me wrong. They'll bring him up to the main roster before long, seeing as he's the current NXT champion, and all the last few NXT champions, Big E, Seth Rollins, and Bo Dallas, are all currently on the main roster. So those are the three people from NXT that I can see doing wonders on the main roster, as you said, before long. At the end innovator, his question was, would you like to see WWE release a Best of NXT DVD? A DVD? Probably not. I don't think enough people know of NXT to buy a DVD on its best matches. But if we're talking about NXT dating back to 2010, I know a lot of NXT back, in those years from 2010 to 2012 when it was still a competition show. I know a lot of that was shit. I understand that wholeheartedly. This is coming from a guy that watched every single fucking episode of the show. But there were a lot of great matches. Jericho versus Daniel Bryan on night one on the premiere of NXT. I thought was a great matchup. So there's a lot of good matches from NXT that I think deserve to be on a best of NXT DVD, along with Cesaro and the obvious ones like Cesaro and Sami Zayn, Adrian Neville versus Bo Dallas, and Charlotte versus Natalya. A lot of great matches. Paige versus Emma from Arrival. So DVD probably not, but like I said on Wrestle Rant Radio last week, the WWE Network needs more fucking original exclusive content, and something like this would be perfect for that, especially if they want to promote NXT on the network. Granted, if you're already watching this on the network, then you already have the thing. But anyway, though, it'd make people more inclined to watch NXT on a more regular basis if they saw how great it is with these matches. So do maybe like a 1-hour special with interviews from people, and show the match maybe in its entirety or clips of it or whatever. Do a 1 or 2 hour special on the network dedicated to the best matches in NXT history, dating back to the show's inception in 2010. You can include matches like Jericho and Daniel Bryan and a few others, and I think it could be great. So absolutely, I love the idea, just maybe not as a DVD, maybe more as a network special, because like I said before, as a DVD, it might not sell as well as like the Greatest Factions DVDs and stuff like that, because not a lot of people are aware of NXT. At the Wrestle Guy, his question was, do you think Reigns versus Cena shouldn't happen for the first time until a WrestleMania or SummerSlam? Absolutely. I think someone asked me a similar question or last week. They asked me when should it happen, and like I said then, it's a big money matchup. Reigns and John Cena are arguably the two biggest baby faces that WWE has at their disposal right now. With Daniel Bryan being out and CM Punk being gone, Reigns is the next biggest star next to John Cena. There might be a big gap. It might be John Cena here and Roman Reigns here. But they're still the next biggest stars in WWE right now in terms of baby faces. So yeah, absolutely that match should be saved for a SummerSlam. Not this year, obviously. But maybe even, I think Survivor Series is even still a little too soon. It could happen as soon as WrestleMania 31. I don't see it happening. I don't want to see it happen that soon. But save it for SummerSlam 2015. I think it'd be a great addition to the card. Hopefully they don't do what they did with Ryback and John Cena. That was a big money matchup at one point, and they wasted it by having it be a filler feud for John Cena in between his title defenses after winning the WWE Championship from The Rock at WrestleMania. And they went right into that feud because they had nothing better to do with John Cena. So that was a waste of Ryback. It was a waste of Cena. It was a waste of a feud overall. The matches weren't really that bad. They were actually pretty halfway decent. But they wasted that money feud. They wasted that money matchup on a filler feud in between the big feuds between The Rock and Daniel Bryan at SummerSlam, because they needed to kill time somehow and just rushed into it, and it sucked. So hopefully they don't do that same thing with Roman Reigns. And here's hoping they don't turn Roman Reigns heel anytime soon, because he's much better as a babyface at this point in time, and given how over he is at the moment too. And Ryback was over too, and we all know how that happened, and then we all know how that ended. So we'll go on from there to the next question. At IODO, his question was, what do you think it will take for the WWE to be consistently good week to week again? If we're talking about like the Attitude Era and you want to see boobs on TV every week again, it's not going to happen. It really all comes down to your perception of the show. I mean, if you personally aren't enjoying the show on a week to week basis, I mean, we could go from Joey over here saying that I love Raw, it's the greatest thing ever, I love everything on the show. And then we go to Mark over here like, oh, this is gay. This everything on this show is shit. Every single match, every segment, it's gay. I don't know why I'm watching. I'm going to stop watching. And you don't end up watching. You don't end up stop watching. But anyway, though, it's all about perception. Me, personally, I think the product right now is good. I don't think it's great. We've seen better days. But I think it's good. I don't think it's as bad as it was a number of years ago. I think 2009 and 2010 were the dark days of the WWE, in my opinion. I think 2014 has been a better year for WWE than it was during at that point in time. It's been better, especially with guys like CM Punk and Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan being around, and with them gone, it really leaves a gap at top of the roster. But that being said, though, I think we have seen better days. We have seen worse days. But what does it need to be consistently good week to week? Just consistency. I mean, WWE, like I said before, with the whole New Nation of Domination angle, they pull the plug on shit so soon. Like without hesitation, without any warning whatsoever, they pull shit too soon. They pull the plug on it way too soon. So they really need to learn to be more consistent. But aside from that, I really can't find any major flaws with WWE right now. I mean, the 3-hour Raws, that will always be an issue, but they can't really go back on that now because they make so much money off of it. and especially at this point in time with the whole budget cuts, they would lose money if they went back to 2 hours. It's not like they're paying for that extra hour; they're being paid for that extra hour. So that's how they're gaining a lot of revenue from that third hour. So they're not going back to 2. I mean, that's an issue, but there's really nothing else right now that really comes across as being a major flaw with WWE. Just continue to build up the future, the Bray Wyatts, the Roman Reigns', the Cesaros, the Dean Ambroses, the Seth Rollinses, people like that, and it'll be good week to week. I mean, you go back to the episode, and I'll mention this real quick. The episode of Raw that I was at from Hartford on June 30th, it was one of the best episodes of the year. You had Jericho coming back, AJ Lee coming back, a new DF champion crowned. It was an awesome fucking episode. And people were like, oh, that's an amazing episode, but the reason why it was so amazing was because we don't get shit like that on a weekly basis. If we did, it wouldn't be as special. You can't have someone return every week. And if that was the case, then, like I said, it would not be special. So that's why it's not good, or quote-unquote good every week. It's really all about your perception. Someone could have thought that was the worst show of the year. It really comes down to what you like and what you don't like. Tune in for what you like, and whatever you don't like, if the entire product is shit in your eyes, then just don't watch it, and, tune out for a little while, come back later, see you, 6 months down the line, if there's something you like, then, start watching again. That's really all what it comes down to, in my opinion. At Heel by Design, Johnny Boy, my friend, his question was, what does Batista have to do differently the next time around to not only get over, but back on top? So I'm in the minority on this one. I know I'm the only one who thinks this, but I think Batista's last run with the WWE was not bad at all. He made the most of a shitty situation, and it wasn't even his fucking fault. He came back it was the right guy at the wrong time. A lot of people wanted to see Batista back. Don't even act like you didn't want to see him back, because a lot of people did. Maybe you're a Batista hater and you never wanted to see him back. I understand that, but there was a lot of hypocrites out there. A lot of members of the IWC that were like, oh, I want to see Batista back in the fold right now. And then he comes back and then he gets fucking booed out of the building. And I don't blame them for that. I still to this day don't think that they're booing Batista. I think it was just more so the fact they wanted change, and Batista was not the change they were looking for. Had anyone else won the Royal Rumble, they would have booed their brains out for that guy as well. It needed to be Daniel Bryan, and because it wasn't, and it was Batista, they booed him. He was the scapegoat, and he made the most of a shitty situation, like I said before. Great matches at WrestleMania, Extreme Rules, at Payback, he made a great heel. He's a much better heel than he is a babyface. But when he comes back, I could very well see him being a babyface after all the mainstream media attention that he's gotten from the whole Guardians of the Galaxy video with that movie, and I thought was amazing, and I'm going to go see it for a second time this week, hopefully. But I could see him coming back as a babyface whenever he does come back, and he will be back whenever that is, maybe later this year, WrestleMania time. I thought he'd be back for SummerSlam, but apparently not. But hopefully he is back before long. Maybe after Brock Lesnar and Jericho take off, he can come back and take their spot for the time being. But what does he have to do differently? Like I said before, it really wasn't his fault. I really just blame the bad timing of the situation that he came back. Had he came back around this time, or maybe a couple months from now, when there are no real stars atop the roster, then people might have been more welcoming. But there's really, like I said before, really no reason, really nothing for him to do differently. I think he did everything right. It just really wasn't his fault. The situation was out of his hands. It was just bad timing. But when he does come back, hopefully he's a heel, babyface, whatever. Hopefully he gets over the next time he's around in whatever role he's destined to be in. Like, if he's a heel, don't cheer him. If he's a face, don't boo him. You know what I mean? So, but I would like to see him as champion. That's been his goal forever, dating back to whenever his first DVD came out, his first documentary back in 2009. He said on that DVD, I want to be the undisputed WWE champion. He didn't say WWE champion. He didn't say World Heavyweight champion. It wasn't a typo. It wasn't a miscommunication between Batista and WWE. He wants to be the undisputed WWE champion. Now that we have only one championship, there's no better time for him to win the title than right now. So hopefully he, after Brock Lesnar takes off and seeing that hopefully isn't in the title picture by year's end, and I talked about this in last week's video, but if Batista was to come back, hopefully they can give him the run with the championship, which he was probably guaranteed from the start. I think the initial plan a number of months ago when he came back the first time in January was for him to win the Royal Rumble and win the championship at WrestleMania, but because of all the bullshit that happened with, the Yes Movement and stuff like that, I'm not saying the Yes Movement was bullshit, but it was just like bad timing, like I said before, and it was just really bad timing for him to come back. So, and I'm sure of it that he was promised for a championship run, so hopefully he can get that when he comes back later this year. At Raw's Gibby, his question was, any wrestlers you would like to see in Global Force Wrestling? Long list of guys here. AJ Styles, Bad Influence, Daniels and Kazarian. Alberto Del Rio, Drew McIntyre, Evan Bourne, Kurt Hawkins, Chris Sabin. A lot of guys I would love to see in Global Force Wrestling. CM Punk, Do I see any of those guys going there? Probably not, especially if they have a steady job in ROH. Like I said before, AJ Styles is doing great for himself in ROH and New Japan. So if he were to go over to Global Force Wrestling, it might be a step down for him. I don't know. We got to see how this Global Force Wrestling thing pans out. They've announced so many partnerships with companies that we've never even heard of before. But they need a fucking TV deal. Without a TV deal, your company is nothing. So Jeff Jarrett needs a TV deal to really get this thing off the ground. And if he does, God bless him. Hopefully he can bring in the big names and some great talent. If it's an alternative to WWE, I will definitely tune in. I love the WWE to death, obviously. But if it's something different, I'll check it out. So I'm looking forward to it. Those are some people that I would like to see there. What are the chances of them being signed? Very slim. They're probably going to bring in a lot of nobodies to begin with. But with Del Rio being released, it'd be great to see him in Global Force Wrestling, maybe at some point, maybe with Ricardo in tow, Drew McIntyre, Evan Bourne, like I said before, and AJ Styles, CM Punk. Doubtful very much so for CM Punk, especially if he's retired. But anyway, those are some people that I would like to see in Global Force Wrestling, if it does indeed come to fruition later this year or early next year. Next question comes from at ESPN Michaels Jr. His question was, how many reasons can you explain why John Cena would retain the title against Lesnar? I have 3. So I didn't really go much into this. I mean, I thought about it for a few minutes. I didn't really think about it. I didn't spend an entire day thinking about it. So maybe if I did, I would have come up with more reasons. But here's the 3 reasons that I can come up with why WWE would not put the title on Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. 1, house shows. Brock Lesnar is not going to fucking work house shows. And they may need a champion for their house shows to defend the title, help bring people in. So that's one reason. 2, the pay-per-views. I don't know how many pay-per-views can go without having a World Championship matchup. I think they'll be fine, personally. But maybe WWE thinks otherwise. They need someone atop the roster, as champion, defending the title on pay-per-views. So, and Brock Lesnar is not going to sign up for more dates. I don't care what anyone says. I'm going to stick to my guns, and say that he will not sign on for more dates despite being champion. So that's 2 reasons. 3, the shock value. The WWE Network was coming around that WrestleMania 30 was the first pay-per-view to air live on the WWE Network. And it really sucks to say, but I think a major factor behind the streak ending this year was so Vince McMahon can sell network subscriptions. To say that anything can happen at WrestleMania, you don't know what you're missing by not subscribing to the network. So I think that was part of it. I think they could do the same thing at SummerSlam, because I think it might be a foregone conclusion in many people's minds that Brock Lesnar will be winning the championship, so I don't have to subscribe, I don't have to watch SummerSlam because I know what's going to happen. They have Cena win like, oh, you don't know what's going to happen? Always watch, subscribe, and find out for yourself. You never know what's going to happen. That'd be bullshit. I still think if that's the sole reason why the streak ended, I don't think it is. But if it was the sole reason why the streak ended, I'd be extremely pissed. Just for them to sell network subscriptions, that's ridiculous. That's fucking stupid. But hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully Brock Lesnar goes over. Just because there are reasons why John Cena would go over, and I'm not completely ruling him out of the question. I do think there is a chance, a possibility, that John Cena does go over on Sunday. Do I see it happening? No, but I do think there is a chance for the reasons that I mentioned, and maybe the reasons that you have as well. At Crazy Lee XXX, her question was, do you think the WWE should return to these split brands? I personally think it would give a lot more talents more spotlight. Absolutely. I've been saying this, a lot of people have been saying this for years now. I love the brand split. I love the draft. I love Raw. I love SmackDown as their own separate entities. They might not have they have a big roster of a lot of talent, but they might not have enough depth with those guys, and the lack of brand split might, attribute to that. With that being said, absolutely, I think a guy like Dolph Ziggler, a Damian Sandow, a Big E, a Kofi Kingston, they could all shine on their own brand. If they had their SmackDown to themselves and they shined on that show, I think they could very much get over as big stars and then be traded to Raw, years later, and then get over there on their own. That's why guys like Dolph Ziggler, Damian Sandow, and so many others, Cesaro, aren't getting over right. Maybe not getting over, but not being used to their full potential, because the show is being, overshadowed by guys like Roman Reigns, which is not a bad thing. He's the fresh face, but the John Cena, the Randy Orton, the whoever else is Seth Rollins, Triple H, whatever. If they had SmackDown all to themselves, then absolutely, I think they could become bigger stars overnight. Do I see them going back to the split branch in the near future? Absolutely not. Do I think they might go back to it in the future? I think so. I think there's a chance of it. Maybe long down the line, just not anytime soon. But yeah, being the biggest advocate of the brand split that there is, I would love to see brand split come back at some point in time. Like I said before, will it come back in the near future? No. Will it ever come back? Never say never. I know it's a popular catchphrase in wrestling, but never say never. At Raymond Morcillo, RJ from Wrestle Rant Radio, I apologize for botching your last name. I still to this day cannot pronounce it correctly. But he's got the final question for this week's video. His question was, when do you think Cesaro will get the push he deserves? Great question. I can't tell you. Like I said before when I answered the first question of the video, first question now, last question, Cesaro is a guy that I think that if he was being buried, he would not be on TV right now. He'd be losing matches like crazy. And he is to an extent, but like I said before, he had such a strong showing against John Cena, against the WWE World Heavyweight Champion a few weeks ago on Raw, that it led to me to believe that they really don't have it out for this guy. They're not thinking that, oh, we need to intentionally bury this guy. I wasn't really getting that vibe at all, to be quite honest with you. But I think it's really only a matter of timing. I think with Brock Lesnar being back and Jericho being back and Randy Orton and Randy Orton and Roman Reigns doing their thing, there just really isn't many feuds for Cesaro right now atop the card. Like if Brock Lesnar never came back and they never did that feud, and maybe if Daniel Bryan was still around and they did Daniel Bryan versus Brock Lesnar instead, that could have very well see Cesaro versus John Cena. So Cesaro, had Daniel Bryan not gotten injured, Cesaro could be one of the top heels in the company right now for all we know. We don't really know for sure. But with that being said, I'm going to have to guess. If I had to take a guess on when Cesaro will be pushed, I'll have to say after Night of Champions maybe. At the soonest after SummerSlam. They just need to find direction for the guy. They're just kind of waiting for something for him to do, to give him something to do, because right now, really all the top spots are currently occupied. So they gotta wait until after SummerSlam, after Night of Champions, until someone leaves, like a Brock Lesnar after a Jericho leaves or something like that, to turn him babyface or give him a big time feud with a guy like a Randy Orton or a John Cena, whatever. I think it's just only a matter of time, to be quite honest with you. Like I said before, I don't think they have it out for him. I don't think they're intentionally trying to bury him. I think it's just a matter of the fact that they really just do not have anything for him at the moment. Creative has nothing for you, as Colt Cabana would usually say, as he always says. But anyway, though, yes, Cesaro, I think, will be pushed, hopefully before long, before the end of the year, by far, definitely. They see what they have in him. They see the talent. They see the potential in him. They just need to find something for him to do. That's all. And that's going to do it for this week's hashtag AskGSM video. Always appreciate you guys sending in the questions. You can leave a comment down below. Tweet me on Twitter with the hashtag AskGSM at WrestleRant, or find me on Facebook, Graham Jason Matthews. Leave a comment on the wall or on the post that I usually put up on Sunday nights when I gather the questions. Like, comment, and subscribe. All support is greatly appreciated. I'm Graham Jason Matthews, and I'll catch you guys next week.